The year was 49 BCE, and in the heart of Rome, a crime was about to unfold that would make modern bank robberies look like petty theft. What you're about to hear is the story of the greatest heist in ancient history, a theft so audacious, so perfectly executed, that it nearly brought the Roman Empire to its knees. And the man who orchestrated it was someone the Romans trusted more than anyone else in the world. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar, and he was about to steal the entire treasury of Rome. But this wasn't just any ordinary theft. This was a crime that would reshape the ancient world, trigger a civil war that lasted for decades, and ultimately transform Rome from a republic into an empire. What makes it even more incredible is that Caesar committed this heist in broad daylight with hundreds of witnesses, and somehow convinced half the Roman world that he was the victim. Picture ancient Rome at the height of its power, the greatest civilization the world had ever known. Streets bustling with merchants from every corner of the Mediterranean, senators debating the fate of nations in marble halls, and at the center of it all stood the Aerarium Sanctius, the sacred treasury that contained the wealth of the entire Roman world. This wasn't just a building full of money. It was the financial heart of an empire. Gold from Gaul, silver from Spain, precious stones from Egypt, tribute from conquered nations, centuries of accumulated wealth that represented the blood, sweat, and sacrifice of countless Roman legions. The treasury was so sacred that it was guarded not just by soldiers, but by religious law itself. Only the Senate had the authority to access these funds, and only in times of extreme emergency. The keys to the treasury were held by the tribunes of the people, representatives elected to protect Roman citizens from the abuse of power. In theory, the system was foolproof. In practice, it was about to be shattered by one man's insatiable ambition. Julius Caesar had returned from Gaul as a conquering hero. 8 years of brutal warfare had made him incredibly wealthy and dangerously popular. He had expanded Roman territory, defeated enemies that had threatened the Republic for generations, and sent streams of treasure flowing back to Rome. But success had also made him powerful enemies in the Senate. The conservative faction, led by men like Cato the Younger and Marcus Bibulus, feared what Caesar represented. They saw him as a threat to the traditional Roman way of life, a general whose popularity with the common people made him more dangerous than any foreign enemy. They were determined to stop him from gaining more power, even if it meant destroying him completely. The tension came to a head when Caesar's term as governor of Gaul was about to expire. According to Roman law, he would have to return to Rome as a private citizen, vulnerable to prosecution by his enemies. They had prepared a series of charges against him, trumped-up accusations that could result in exile or even death. Caesar faced a choice: submit to their justice and risk everything he had worked for, or fight back. What happened next would change the course of history. On January 10th, 49 BCE, Caesar made his decision. He led his loyal 13th Legion across the Rubicon River, the boundary between Gaul and Italy, uttering the famous words, "Alea iacta est." The die is cast. This single act transformed Caesar from a Roman general into an enemy of the state, and set the stage for the greatest heist in ancient history. But here's what most people don't know about Caesar's march on Rome. It wasn't just about seizing power. It was about seizing money. Caesar understood something that his enemies had overlooked. In ancient warfare, victory didn't just go to the most skilled general. It went to whoever could afford to keep fighting the longest. And Caesar was about to ensure that he had deeper pockets than anyone else in the Roman world. Caesar's first target wasn't the Senate or his political enemies. It was the Aerarium Sanctius itself. He knew that whoever controlled Rome's treasury controlled Rome's future. The wealth stored in that sacred building could buy loyalty from wavering senators, fund armies to fight his enemies, and finance a civil war that could last for years if necessary. But stealing the Roman treasury wasn't like robbing a bank. This was theft on a scale that defied imagination. We're talking about the accumulated wealth of the greatest empire in human history. Gold and silver worth hundreds of millions in today's money. Precious artifacts from across the known world. Currency that represented the economic foundation of Mediterranean civilization. When Caesar's advance forces reached Rome in early 49 BCE, most of his enemies had already fled the city. They had taken with them whatever portable wealth they could carry, but they had left behind the one prize that mattered most. The Senate had assumed that the sacred nature of the treasury would protect it, that even Caesar wouldn't dare violate something so fundamental to Roman society. They were tragically wrong. Caesar's approach to the heist was brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than sneaking into the treasury like a common thief, he simply declared that he had the authority to take what he needed. He claimed that the Senate's flight from Rome had created a constitutional crisis, and that extraordinary circumstances required extraordinary measures. It was theft disguised as legal procedure, robbery presented as patriotic duty. The tribune Marcus Caecilius Metellus tried to block Caesar's access to the treasury. Standing before the massive bronze doors, he invoked every law and tradition that protected the sacred funds. He reminded Caesar that the treasure belonged to the Roman people, not to any individual general, and that taking it would be tantamount to stealing from every citizen in the empire. Caesar's response reveals the ruthless calculation behind his actions. He told Metellus that it was easier to do something than to talk about it, and that if the tribune continued to obstruct him, Caesar would have him killed on the spot. This wasn't the language of law and order. This was the threat of a man who had already crossed every line that mattered. When Metellus still refused to move, Caesar's soldiers simply pushed him aside. What happened next was unprecedented in Roman history. Caesar broke open the treasury doors, walked into the sacred chamber, and began systematically looting the accumulated wealth of centuries. Gold coins were loaded into wagons. Silver bars were hauled away by the cartload. Precious artifacts that had decorated Roman temples for generations were packed up like common cargo. The scale of the theft was staggering. Ancient sources suggest that Caesar made off with over 15,000 talents of gold, 30,000 talents of silver, and countless precious stones and artifacts. To put that in perspective, this was enough wealth to fund multiple armies for several years, enough money to buy the loyalty of entire provinces, enough treasure to bankrupt the Roman state if it fell into the wrong hands. But the true genius of Caesar's heist wasn't just taking the money, it was how he used it. While his enemies were scrambling to raise funds for their own armies, Caesar was already distributing his stolen wealth to ensure maximum impact. He paid bonuses to his soldiers that were larger than most people earned in a lifetime. He bought the loyalty of key officials throughout Italy. He funded public works projects that made him popular with ordinary citizens. Every coin Caesar spent was a coin his enemies couldn't use against him. Every soldier he bought was a soldier they couldn't recruit. Every city he bribed was a city that would close its gates to his rivals. The stolen treasury money became the foundation of Caesar's entire war effort, and ultimately, the key to his victory over the forces of the Roman Republic. The psychological impact of the theft was as devastating as the financial loss. For centuries, the inviolability of the treasury had been a symbol of Roman law and order. The idea that one man could simply take whatever he wanted, regardless of tradition, law, or sacred obligation, shattered fundamental assumptions about how Roman society worked. If Caesar could steal the treasury with impunity, what other sacred institutions were vulnerable to ambitious individuals? Caesar's enemies tried desperately to frame the heist as a crime against the Roman people. Cicero wrote passionate speeches about the violation of sacred law. Cato the Younger spoke of the treasury theft as the beginning of the end for republican values. They painted Caesar as a common criminal who had stolen the birthright of every Roman citizen. But their words carried little weight against the reality of Caesar's growing power. The money Caesar stole allowed him to move faster than anyone expected. While Pompey and the Senate were still organizing their resistance, Caesar was already marching through Italy with well-paid, highly motivated troops. Cities that might have resisted were instead opening their gates, welcoming the general who had demonstrated such spectacular generosity to those who supported him. But perhaps the most brilliant aspect of Caesar's strategy was how he transformed theft into propaganda. He didn't present himself as a criminal who had robbed the Roman people. Instead, he claimed to be liberating resources that had been hoarded by a corrupt elite. The treasury money, he argued, belonged to the people of Rome, and he was simply ensuring it was used for their benefit rather than sitting unused in the Senate's vaults. This narrative proved remarkably effective. Many ordinary Romans saw Caesar not as a thief, but as someone who had finally given them access to wealth that was rightfully theirs. The bonuses he distributed to soldiers, the public works he funded, the games and festivals he sponsored. All of this was presented as returning stolen wealth to its proper owners. It was a masterpiece of political spin that turned grand larceny into populist heroism. The long-term consequences of Caesar's heist extended far beyond the immediate civil war. By demonstrating that the Roman treasury could be seized by anyone with sufficient audacity and military backing, Caesar had fundamentally altered the political landscape of the ancient world. Future strongmen would remember the lesson that in times of crisis, he who controls the money controls everything else. The theft also revealed the inherent weakness of the republican system. All of Rome's careful constitutional safeguards, all of their traditions and sacred laws had proven powerless against one determined individual with loyal soldiers. The treasury heist wasn't just robbery. It was a demonstration that the Roman Republic was far more fragile than anyone had imagined. In the years that followed, other ambitious leaders would attempt similar moves. Mark Antony would raid the treasury to fund his campaigns. Augustus would reorganize the entire financial system to prevent future thefts. The Roman Empire that emerged from the ashes of the Republic was, in many ways, designed specifically to prevent anyone from repeating Caesar's audacious crime. But the most remarkable aspect of this story is how completely Caesar succeeded in rewriting history. Today, most people remember him as a great general and statesman, a victim of assassination who died defending the common people against a corrupt elite. Few realize that his rise to power was built on what was essentially the greatest bank robbery in human history. The treasury heist of 49 BCE proves that sometimes the biggest crimes are committed not by shadowy criminals in dark alleys, but by respected leaders in broad daylight. Caesar didn't need to sneak into the treasury under cover of darkness. He simply walked in and took what he wanted, secure in the knowledge that his enemies were too shocked to stop him and too weak to punish him. The Roman treasury that Caesar emptied had taken centuries to accumulate. Generations of Roman soldiers had died to fill those vaults. Countless conquered peoples had paid tribute to create that vast hoard of wealth. In a single afternoon, one man undid the financial work of hundreds of years and used the proceeds to remake the ancient world according to his own vision. Perhaps the most chilling lesson from Caesar's heist is how easily civilized institutions can be swept aside by determined individuals. The Roman Republic had lasted for over 400 years. It had survived foreign invasions, internal rebellions, and countless political crises. But it couldn't survive one man who was willing to ignore every law and tradition that stood between him and absolute power. The next time someone tells you that institutions and laws will always protect society from ambitious strongmen, remember Julius Caesar and the Roman treasury, because sometimes the greatest threats come not from enemies outside the gates, but from heroes who decide that the rules no longer apply to them. If this story of ancient ambition and modern lessons fascinates you, subscribe to The Gray Hour for more hidden truths about how power really works. Because the past has a way of repeating itself, and the lessons we refuse to learn from history are doomed to teach themselves.